This morning, I'm going to be talking about Agni Yoga and the achievement of spirit. It is interesting for those of us that are either being introduced to this path or we're midway or we've been on this journey for many incarnations to really think about it. To think about all the components that make up this kind of a path, to think of the tremendous support system that backs us up, serves as protecting elements. So while we are on this path, it's not a path of isolation. It is a path that has tremendous guidance, and yet where some people think this path is filled with rules and regulations, that's really not the case. Rules and regulations for those who are spiritually awakened are guidelines for us to resource, to draw upon when we find we may be flickering, our light may be flickering a little bit, or certain moments in our life may be so tough for us that we're blinded by the tests, by the situations, by the environment. And we become discouraged. That's when we go to these so-called rules and regulations, what I call directives, guidelines to inspire us. I was thinking this morning as I was taking a look at the weather news and how gruesome the news is, not just the weather, but the climate. And I was thinking about our grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and of course our children, and what they're going to be facing in the future. It was so grim. You know, the news was so grim. And then wait a minute. The teacher talks about the future. And when the teaching talks about the future, we talk about evolution, advancement, joy, beauty, taking responsibility for the future. There's so much richness in the teaching about the future. And so when I looked at listened to the weather report and the whole climate and the way Robert Nye defines weather, he said, weather is the day-to-day experience, whereas climate is a whole overall process that directs the weather. I thought, well, that's an interesting definition. I never really knew there was a difference between the two terms, and now I do. So where we may not be able to change the weather, meaning the day-to-day, rain and thunder and hurricanes and earthquakes and so forth, through our thought processes, we can change the climate. Because as we engage in these rules and regulations, or the direction the teaching gives us through things like virtue. Like, for example, we know there are 12 essential virtues that form the fundamental teaching of Agni Yoga. If we begin to incorporate these 12 virtues, we're going to change the climate. The climate can be a reflection of the consciousness of humanity. The teaching also talks about certain hindrances and obstacles, and I will mention them in the next few minutes. So we have hindrances over here, basically the 6 hindrances that I'll be mentioning that seem to control so much of the thinking and the emotions of humanity. But we have an antithesis to these hindrances and obstacles, which is the virtues, these 12 beautiful virtues that form the foundation to the life of any Agni Yogi. In addition to that, so this morning thinking about, okay, I'm going to be talking about Agni Yoga and the achievement or advancement of the spirit, both achievement and advancement of the spirit. To me, it is like living a life by sitting in a symphonic orchestra and playing the music of the master in perfect harmony, that my instrument is in perfect attunement to the cosmic life, and that I'm using this instrument to manifest this great plan of this soul. Now, when I say the great plan of the soul, it is all the musicians that are making up that symphonic orchestra. All of the souls in that orchestra are making up this incredible masterpiece of music, which is the expression of the music or the celestial music of hierarchy. Part of this music presents us with exercises like we did this morning. When our emotional body is out of sync, which happens momentarily almost every day, we have these exercises. They're free. We can sit down and for 20 minutes engage in an emotional exercise like we went through today and clean out our entire system so we can go back in, sit down in that orchestra and return to playing this perfect music, which is our life purpose, which is engaging in service to create this magnificent future for humanity. So that's the introduction. In the little bit of time we have left, I know. You know, the last 3 weeks I've been talking about Agni Yoga, what it means to become an Agni Yogi. And I think in this whole process of our dialogue, we're becoming aware that becoming an Agni Yogi is not something that's going to appeal to everyone. The reason being is that it requires a readiness. And so many members of society, so many members of or citizens of humanity, they're just not there yet. They're just not there yet. So what does this mean to us? First of all, we know that Agni Yoga is the most recent yoga in the whole lineage of yogas today. It is the most advanced, the most recent yoga. The reason we have advancing yogas is because of the evolution of life. Evolution is the natural process of life. Whether you agree to that or not, it's just science. It is science. Now, to be an Agni Yogi puts you on that advanced path, which requires an amazing readiness. It's like you have to be ready all the time. It is like firemen and policemen. They have alarm systems in their home. So even though they're off duty and they're home, if a crisis occurs, that alarm goes off in their home, they immediately jump into their appropriate clothing and run to the station to engage in service. That is what it is like, so to speak, to be an Agni Yogi. You are on alert. You are vigilant every single minute of your day, and also during the night when you are so-called sleeping, but awake on the astral and mental and intuitive planes, Buddhic planes. When there is a call that goes out, you're there. You cannot say, you know, I only have 2 hours to spend. Or in 3 days, I'll come back and help you. If you still need help in 3 days, I'll be back to help. An Agni Yogi, therefore, has paid off a good deal of their karma, their karmic responsibilities, so they are free to help humanity evolve into the future. This is why it requires a lot of readiness, and it requires vigilance, and it requires an immediate response anytime that call for service goes out. And this is why we have one of these virtues called sacrificial service. This is a path of leadership. For some, they prefer to evolve at a slower pace. Some members of humanity prefer to evolve at a slower pace. But to be an Agni Yogi puts the disciple on the lightning path, the path of advancing leadership. To be a leader requires a certain amount of control over his Maya and glamours and illusions. It requires dedication and commitment to goals that will challenge him to surpass himself or to surpass herself. With each step of advancement, the Agni Yogi is going to move from local leadership to global leadership. It moves the person, the leader, from the unreal to the real. It is not easy, but the teaching is not easy. It is for those who at birth had a strong, innate drive to bring about positive changes for humanity, not only progressive changes, but positive changes for humanity. The aim of the Agni Yoga teaching is to show humanity how to achieve a fiery union with the fire of cosmos. So even that statement in itself is the indicator to us why readiness is required to be an Agni Yogi. For example, it requires purity. As the disciple awakens and begins to strive toward his lofty goals, he must purify himself physically, emotionally, and mentally. But you have the freedom of choice. See, there isn't anyone standing up here with a mallet saying this is what you must do, saying this is what you can do, if this is your inclination. If at birth there was that strong, innate impulse to make a difference in the world, then you know you have to start working on yourself. Not for yourself, but for the world. as we awaken and strive toward our lofty goals, we must purify ourselves from these hindrances which prevent the person from climbing the mountain. Sometimes we are lazy, and our inertia keeps us from starting the long climb upwards. And when we're talking about laziness, there is a phrase called the glamour of being busy. Sometimes people, even in their busyness, are in fact lazy. So this is something to really think about. You know, how can a person be extremely busy over here and at the same time be lazy? It means you're escaping from that moment of birth when you said, I have this innate desire to help humanity to progress, to evolve, to bring positive changes into the life. See, somehow, some way, along the way, we were stuck. And in becoming stuck, we still had that fire in us to move, but now it's like the chipmunk and the exercise wheel. Now we're just going in circles. And our rationalization is that, well, I'm so busy. I'm so busy I can't go to a full moon meditation, either because I'm so busy or I'm exhausted. My busy day today is just not going to give me any energy left to go to a full moon meditation. And yet, these full moon meditations, also called solar fire meditations, is one of our services that we give to humanity to change the whole chemistry, astrochemistry of the world today, because so many of us around the world are engaged in group meditation. See what I'm saying? So just because you're busy, busy, busy does not negate that you have fallen into inertia or laziness. We are content at that point to sit at the bottom of the mountain and make excuses about how life is keeping us tied to our present position. Our present position means what? To my spouse, my family, my friends, my relatives, my job, my money, you know, I'm so stuck. When we're supposed to be dragging humanity with us as we're trying to climb to the summit of the mountain. Instead, we're letting this keep us at the base of the mountain. Many people are carrying heavy emotional boulders that weigh them down so much that they cannot continue on the path upward. The person can see the vision but cannot let go of his or her attachments. Many spiritual people have other big rocks that block their path, such as separative ideas. Separative ideas are born on the mental plane and prevent us from seeing the beauty of unity. The beauty of unity is found at the summit of the mountain that we are climbing toward. There's a lot of pondering you can engage in on that statement. Master Morya, this great sage, gave us the Agni Yoga teaching to encourage us and to enlighten us on our path. He tried to show us the methods of overcoming our little self so that our real self can manifest in our life, throughout our life. The essence of MM's teachings is condensed. So we can recognize them, as I was saying earlier, through 12 virtues. If we really want to change our consciousness, expand our consciousness, to step on this lightning path of Agni Yoga, we want to make these virtues a part of our character, to clean our field of certain things. But there are also 6 ugly kind of behaviors that seem to try to form an army against the expression of these 12 virtues. It's these ugly behaviors that are destroying the beauty of unity. And these are weeds, we could call them, that you're very familiar with. Jealousy is one, greed, anger, hatred, fear, and revenge. All of these form the ugly behaviors that try to snuff out or destroy the power and the spirituality of the essence of the Agni Yoga teaching. So the first thing we're going to do on a daily basis is to observe these 6 ugly characteristics of our personality life and begin to eliminate them. To eliminate all faces of jealousy, to eliminate all faces of greed, to eliminate all faces of anger and hatred and revenge. The first face you're going to recognize that needs to be eliminated is the justification of these behaviors. Now here are the 12 virtues which form the fundamentals of the Agni Yoga teaching. Striving, courage, daring, compassion, solemnity, harmlessness, service, compassion, patience, fearlessness, gratitude, and responsibility. Some people are going to say, okay, let me memorize this list. And we write them all down, number them very precisely, 1 through 12. But some of them, people are going to say, let me become the fundamentals of Agni Yoga, and immediately put them into practice. We will become so adept at this practice. It's like having a 12-stringed instrument. And if one of those strings is out of tune, there's an automatic alert button that goes off in your psyche, says you're off. You've moved off center. Instead of being harmless, you're being a little harmful. Instead of being discriminative, you're being separative. But by putting these 12 fundamental elements into who you are as a human being, you become so permeated with the energy and the power of these 12 virtues that the minute you go off center, it's like that string goes out of tune. When you lose your solemnity, when you become harmful, let's say in your speech, when you lose your patience and so forth, or when you blame others for your reactions. These things are not easy to do because of many incarnations of building the ego, of constructing the little self. So these virtues are the foundation upon which we must adorn the temple of the Spirit. This is a phrase from the Agni Yoga teaching. Adorn the temple of the Spirit. The Spirit dwells in these 12 virtues so that they form our temple. As a result of infusing these virtues into our life, what's going to happen? So we want to have a little, insight saying, okay, now what? This is when we have great visions. This is how a person, when they are born and they become 3 or 5 or 7 years old, they have a sense of this vision. It's not just an accident. It's not their GNA or RNA or GMO or... I know. It's because their whole human constitution, their whole consciousness that has been working on themselves, on itself through all these different incarnations, now it's inherent to the nature of that soul to have great visions, ideas, revelations, and beauty. All of these adorn the temple. So for example, if you can think of this, particularly those of you that are here in the room, is Vara, which is the name of our temple and our whole piece of property here, which means the king of the mountain. And we have this beautiful big mountain right outside the door here. It represents something new and simple and beautiful. It represents these 12 fundamental elements of Agni Yoga, or components of Agni Yoga, that all of us have been working on for many, many lifetimes, and finally brought into a physical manifestation, the proof of it. It represents vision. It represents ideas. It represents revelations. It represents beauty. So in order to adorn our temple, we must be detached from the lower personality life. So when people come into our sanctuary, we encourage them to let that lower personality life, the mundane life, just leave it outside. Preferably off the property. Adornment is happy, blissful detachment from the limitations of matter. Attachments are sores which fester and make our temple sick and weak. These virtues are rays of sunshine. These 12 fundamental virtues are rays of sunshine. It brings health and warmth and growth. Very often in the teaching, MM reminds us of the need for careful vigilance over our vehicles. And I tell you, I'm going to jump, now that I've introduced you to the, basically he's saying, okay, I can't, that's not fair to you. I'm going to run over a few minutes this morning, okay? Is that all right? Will you deal with it? Okay. He says, this is what MM says. He says, slumber and such dusty manifestations should be avoided. The manifestation of the shield should be the treasure. And this is from Leaves of Moria's Garden, verse 108. What does this mean? The past couple of weeks in talking about being an Agni Yogi, I have mentioned inertia, if you can remember. If you don't, no problem, just go to our YouTube site and you can listen to every single one of those lectures. Slumber means inertia and laziness. It is an attitude which makes one say, okay, tomorrow I'll do it. I don't really care if it's not done today. I'm tired. I can do it tomorrow. I'll just do it later. Dusty manifestations means that dust accumulates where there is no action. Dust accumulates where there is no action. Our shield is sattva. Sattva is our radioactivity. It's our vibration, our level of awakeness, our degree of responsibility. So if you have these qualities, you're not going to slumber and you will not become dusty, ever. All of our miseries are directly related to attachments and unfulfilled expectations. This puts the self, that capital S self, in a state of slumber because it cannot break through all the turmoil of the lower self, the lower personality. MM says this, and I'm going to read this to you. Master M says, the teacher is sending his shield. Sattva, radioactivity, the highest vibration. The teacher is sending his shield. He wants to see you erecting a mountain. He wants to see how nothing will affect you negatively. He wants to see how courageously you can proceed. The teacher will point out when a grave danger is to be encountered. He advises you to be ready for daring labor. He will help you to conquer an evil hand. The teacher repeats not purposely the long familiar thoughts. The teacher looks ahead. He ordained you to keep your spirit invincible. He wishes to dispel fear. Now, let me interrupt this for just a minute. When he says spirit invincible, to keep our spirit invincible, and you say, how do I do that? By becoming the embodiment of these 12 fundamental components. They have Agni Yoga. The teacher wishes to dispel fear. He wants to make your judgment well-tempered. He restrains you from grievances. He advises you to plan bold projects as before. He is concerned about your health, and he wants you to travel. So a true teacher, that was the end of that quote, by the way. So a true teacher will try to instill virtues in his students. If he does not challenge and test us ceaselessly, then he is not a true teacher. A true teacher is concerned with our spiritual development and not with our personality concerns. He will give us difficult tests which make us stretch our talents to the furthest point of reality. Remember when I said earlier, the Agni Yogi goes from the unreal to the real. So he makes us stretch our talents to the furthest point of reality, which is the furthest point of tensity. We become either really focused in the light of the teaching, or we become one of the many who are attracted to the light but found it too hot near the flame. Too hot near the flame is the teacher, which represents the fire of hierarchy, the fire of cosmos. The one who is attracted will fall back to a comfortable place and watch, while others are transformed into beauties through fusion with the light. A true teacher is not concerned about pleasing our lower personality. It is interesting that many of our contemporary ministers have become the slaves of their congregation. They feel that they must keep certain members' personalities pleased so that large contributions will keep coming in for the church's budget. A teacher who lives the teaching does not care about your personality, does not care about your money. He cares only for what? Our spirit. He bugs us because he wants to see us flower into an expression of beauty. In order to test and develop the strength of his students' characters, the teacher is going to do something that we may not like. He's going to create turmoil in our lives. That's what the teacher does. He teaches the path of detachment, which leads a person to the mountain where courageous deeds result in the attainment of perfection and wisdom. The teacher helps us to realize our points of vanity, and in that realization to transform them into flawless, what? Yes, virtues. The real teacher cannot be bribed or flattered, even though you think he can, and he's so stupid. But it's not the case. It's your blindness that thinks you're being successful. A real teacher cannot be bribed or flattered by anyone because these are actions against the Spirit. The teacher is sending his shield. When you climb to the heights of spiritual achievement, you sense the Spirit is guiding you to the summit. You hear the words of the Great One. He says this, "Be courageous, for I conquered the world." The inspiration of our teacher is our shield against any kind of attack from inner and outer enemies who try to discourage us and turn our steps back toward the shallow places of the earth. And finally, the teacher is concerned about our health. This is why the teacher M gave so many hints and pieces of advice about how to keep our bodies healthy and strong in order to carry on our service for humanity. And this is why our first Agni Yoga booklet publication was on ailments and remedies. Did you ever think? Some of you haven't even read the book. But you must be in perfect health. The teacher suggests to us to have beautiful thoughts, to develop the spirit of gratitude and joy, to sleep well and not waste our energy. Only a healthy person can continuously carry on the responsibilities given to him by his teacher in a world of hindrances and problems. The teacher wants you to travel. Every disciple carries a highly charged, and this is why. Every disciple carries a highly charged aura and wisdom. The teacher wants his disciples to go to many places, to share their radiation and wisdom, to spread regeneration, and also to come under the influence of various nationalities, and to learn and increase their treasury of experiences. Every real teacher is connected with his disciples with threads of light and compassion. And in closing, as the teacher influences his disciples through his wisdom, the disciple also influences him through their thoughts and actions. This is why it is so important that disciples cultivate virtues and develop a sensitivity toward the direction of their teacher